Hello everyone, and welcome to the Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. Summertime. For many, it's a good time. Maybe even their favorite time of year. School's out, and vacations are in. Camping, road trips, concerts, reconnecting, sunshine and peace of mind. Vacation and sunlight, they tend to make us feel that way. Like everything's okay, allowing us to have no worries, even if it's just for a weekend. Unfortunately, it can be when we're in some of our most welcome places that we're subject to some of our most unwelcoming experiences. In a moment, or over several days, a vacation, a celebration, people's lives, crudely interrupted by the harsh realities of life. Tonight's episode, a grim reminder that regardless of the season or occasion, the horrors of the world don't take vacations. Instead, they keep busy year-round. So, let's get started, shall we? When our kids were first born, my partner Erin and I stopped camping altogether, which was something we loved to do as seasoned backpackers. Camping and backpacking specifically was how we met over 14 years ago. Well, once the kids got older, about 4 and 6, we decided to reintroduce camping into our lives. Of course, our style had to be adjusted a bit. We'd have to account for tiny humans with less stamina and climbing experience. Not to mention, we weren't exactly in our beach body phase. Instead of off the beaten path, we opted for something more family-oriented, KOA. Growing up, I'd been to a few KOAs, all of them nice from what I could remember. As a kid, I remember lots of other kids being there. A place to play games inside, outside. It had a very homey feel versus middle of nowhere. And that was going to be perfect for our first little trip as a family. This particular KOA was set out in eastern Washington, absolutely beautiful. We'd initially wanted to visit Leavenworth, but due to the size of our party and our lack of planning, we ended up in a spot that wasn't our first choice, but we felt pretty darn happy with the location. We managed to get a cabin close to the Yakima River, making the spot several degrees cooler than the cabins set away from the water. We'd brought our own portable fencing to help wrangle the kids in a general area, but upon arrival, we realized that there were plenty of obstacles and fences, even man-made barriers. Still, Erin decided to set up the portable fence anyway, specifically around the cabin, blocking the stairs. The campground was truly nice. We had a good time socializing with other families, and our kids made friends with their kids. It was a good time. In retrospect, there was someone who rubbed us the wrong way, if you will. But in such a setting, it's easy to dismiss these things as a misunderstanding. A man, probably in his 20s. My partner and I were in our mid-30s at the time, and he looked clearly younger than us. He had a puppy. That wasn't the part that rubbed us the wrong way. It was when he brought the puppy over to our family area. He didn't walk up to the cabin or anything, but he seemed to hang around it. Naturally, when my partner approached him, my kids flew over there to see the puppy. They know better than to touch without asking, so they asked if they could pet the doggy. And instead of just saying yes, he said, "Yes, but you have to tell the puppy your name." Seems innocent enough. The kids tell the puppy their name, pet the puppy, and eventually he moves on. He didn't exactly acknowledge us adults, but he didn't linger too long, so I wish I could say my mother's intuition kicked in early, but it didn't. After a day of playing in the sun, I was ready to crash. After sharing some burgers with a family camping near us, I went to the cabin and passed out right after sunset. The next time I opened my eyes, it was full dark outside. My little ones were squeezed between the two of us on a suddenly uncomfortable queen mattress. We'd set the kids up at their own bed in the living room area, but clearly my partner had a change of plans or lost the nighttime battle. I wasn't sure if it was from passing out early or being in a now claustrophobic bed, but something woke me up. I laid there debating if I was going to go steal the kids' bed or just try to fall back asleep, and I heard something. It was both familiar, yet I knew I shouldn't be hearing it. The gate. That portable metal gate my partner insisted on putting up was being moved carefully. The thing is, with that thing, it's impossible to be silent. It became clear to me before I even got out of bed. Someone had essentially breached the makeshift barrier to the cabin. The next step was the front door, which I had no idea if it was locked or not. Quietly, I inch out of bed, sliding onto the floor. Now I have a view of the front door. Not good enough to see if it's locked. It's so dark. I grab my cell phone just in case. As I do, the door handle makes the classic jiggle sound one makes when attempting to open a locked door. This caused my palms to get sweaty. My hearing is going weird. I'm officially freaking out, but I stay still. From the bedroom doorway, I can see the whole main living room area. To my left, I saw the silhouette outline of a man peering through the side window. They couldn't see me, but seeing him was all I needed to wake my partner. I crawled back towards the bed, shook Erin, and thank goodness this room only had one small window in the bathroom, so I knew no one could see us. Erin wakes up and without hesitation walks into the living room area, where the guy is still peering in. Instead of opening the front door and confronting this person, Erin walks right up to the window. Now apparently this person can see inside because I watch the silhouette back away quickly. Now, Erin's already got shoes on, making a beeline to the front door of the cabin, yelling back to me to call KOA security. Quickly, I find the number we'd saved when we arrived. I call and explain the situation. They just don't seem that concerned, but they do say they're going to send someone. I hear Erin exchanging words outside, but I'm hesitant to approach the scene myself, so I stay inside and watch from the side window. Erin has the guy completely face first on the ground. I'm impressed and scared. Then I realize Erin's talking to me, telling me to turn the porch light on. Switch by the door, he's saying. I rush to get the light. Erin's still calling for me, so I rush outside. I see the man on the ground is the man from earlier, the one with the puppy. Erin is very sternly asking the man to tell him what the fuck he was doing looking through the windows. The man doesn't answer, but he's clutching his bag to his chest. Erin is attempting to grab it from him while continuing to ask what the fuck he was doing. Then he's asking me if I called security. I tell him yes, but the man, he's still not saying a word. Security shows up, and the man starts piping up about how he lost his dog. He's just looking for it. He tells them he's sure it's around here because the kids were playing with it all day. This back and forth goes on for a while. I'll spare you the details mainly because I don't recall all the lies exchanged, and I was half in and half out checking on the kids every 2 seconds for whatever reason. The end result was he wasn't arrested, since there was no police and apparently no crime. He was also barely questioned by security. They seemed to have more questions for us. At a certain point, I told security I think that maybe we should call the authorities because the guy is lying about so much stuff. I tell them I think he was trying to break in, and they tell me, but he didn't, and there's no evidence to suggest a crime, which was incredibly frustrating. Erin even asked the security officer to check the man's bag. He refused, saying the man had done nothing wrong. So after too much time, the guy is eventually let go from security. He has his camping pass and blah blah, but Erin watches and then follows the man to ensure that he returns to where he came from. which happens to be nowhere near our own cabin. He watches the man open his truck and take out the puppy. The man turns, holding the puppy, and waves at Erin with a disgusting smile. This sends Erin into a frustrated rage. Helpless, he takes down the guy's license plate in his phone. He calls the local non-emergency line to report as what he described as a sicko. They also asked several questions, to which Erin answered, and by the end, they said there was nothing they could do at the time. No crime had been committed, as they put it, but they would take the information. Sleeping that night was out of the question, as needless to say, the whole thing left a shitty taste in our mouth. We both felt like there was nothing we could do except for leave, but we didn't want to wake the kids or do anything to scare them. Besides, we were awake now. No one was getting in. As we packed to leave in the morning, we were floored to see that the man hadn't left yet. He even had the gall to walk over to our area and tell us that he found his puppy, which naturally got the kids interested. And they wanted to see the puppy again, and naturally, we had to be terrible parents, saying no to the cute puppy. Erin kindly asked the guy to leave. I'm sure some whispering was exchanged, but the guy walked away. Before leaving, and feeling rather helpless in the situation, we sort of made it our mission to warn those around us about the man. We filed an official complaint with the front office, not against them, but we wanted his information on file best we could. And if nothing else, I think those staff members personally heard what we were saying. We figured that they'd spend their shift on edge, which is what we wanted. This guy was just looking for an opportunity, preying on people in a place where they may let their guard down, maybe forget to lock a door, or be wary of a stranger before it's too late. For the record, we've stayed at KOAs since this experience. I really don't fault them for their part. This type of thing could happen anywhere, and honestly, their security might have saved us. Which is why now we make sure to travel with some security of our own, or only camp at places where we have the luxury of a locked door. I really hope that guy is locked up somewhere, but just be vigilant out there, because you really never know. I'm currently 20 years old, and I've never suffered from any form of hallucinations or schizophrenia. I'm a healthy, reasonable, well-balanced adult. I'm not sure if I can believe in the supernatural, but these memories are causing irrational feelings. My sister and I grew up in an old, Midwestern farmhouse, and she's convinced it was haunted. She has multiple stories that I may post someday, and I also saw a few odd things, but it could all be explained by a child's imagination, I suppose. Once a year, usually during the winter, I had vivid, closed-eyed hallucinations where random images flashed through my mind, and a strange voice spoke to me. To clarify, these are not dreams. When I opened my eyes, everything would stop, and when I closed them again, it would start right back up. The visions began with an older man's distressed voice and random household objects such as shoes, lamps, dressers, or doors. The voice would repeat things like, "Where is it? I can't find it." I vividly remember that specific line repeating multiple times. After several minutes, I would see items like a globe or the sky, and a warm, soft female voice would say, "It's me." Then the sensation ended, and I could finally go back to sleep. This only happened once a year during the ages 6 to 9. I developed anxiety around winter because I feared having the dream. But then they stopped, and I forgot about them immediately. I only began re-examining my memories a few years ago. Does anyone know what this could mean, or if it's supernatural? I want as many viewpoints as possible because I'm at a loss. For a graduation present, my uncle gave me the keys to his cabin for a week-long trip with my friends. The only other time I'd been out there was the 4th of July weekend when I was 10, but I remembered my cousins and I having a blast. Mostly, I was just excited to be away from adult supervision for the first time. My friends, Carla and Madison, came with me. I think we were all hoping to stay longer than a week, but we never dreamed we'd want to leave early. There were other cabins in the area, but people didn't live there year-round. It should have been another few weeks before the summer crowd came out. The first day we focused on getting settled, and the weather kept us indoors for the second, but nothing unusual happened until the third. That morning, we walked down to the lake, but the water was too cold to swim, so we explored a little instead. The trail we were on circled halfway around the lake with several diverging paths to other cabins, most of which looked roughly the same as ours. I guess the first weird thing was actually when Madison saw the blinds move in one of the cabin windows, like someone had been peeking out. But we thought she was mistaken. There were no cars or lights, nothing. So we walked for another hour until we got hungry. Then we headed back for lunch and a movie. We wanted to try the lake again that evening, but the weather had different plans. Instead, we watched other movies while we drank and made dinner. But while we were eating, my car alarm started blaring. By then it was pretty dark and still storming. So I assumed the thunder set it off, thought no more of it. Likewise, when we heard a trash can fall over, we assumed it was raccoons. The next day is when we started getting scared. There are 2 metal trash cans that sit beneath the kitchen window, and we used them enough times by then to be familiar with the specific sound that they made. All 3 of us are positive we heard at least one fall over, yet when we went to check in the morning, both were right side up again. That was strange, but we didn't truly begin to worry until we noticed my car had 2 flat tires. I only had 1 spare, so that meant we were stuck until my dad could bring a second one. We hadn't driven anywhere since our arrival, and we knew the tires hadn't been low the day before. I called my dad in a panic, but he thought that we were being paranoid. He said it was common to get low leaks on that kind of terrain. Carla and Madison called their families too, but no one could bring us a tire until the following day. Carla's mom had the same response as my dad, and Madison's parents just advised calling the police if we actually saw anyone, words that they would all soon come to regret. We kept ourselves locked inside all day, but that night was the worst of it. We covered all the windows, but obsessively checking outside only to see nothing. Then, sometime after midnight, Carla peeked out the kitchen window and screamed when she saw a bobbing light cutting through one of the forest trails. We pulled the curtain back just far enough to watch the light grow closer and closer, until the man carrying it became visible after stepping out of the tree line. He was tall and skinny, but I couldn't tell if he was tan or just dirty. His clothes were ragged and looked to be a few sizes too big, but I was more concerned with the bat-like object he seemed to be holding in his free hand. Maybe the 3 of us could have taken the guy on his own, but if he had a weapon, at least one of us was likely to get hurt. Madison dialed 911 right away, but we knew it would be a while before anyone showed up. The dispatcher wanted us to hide, but I couldn't handle not knowing where that man was. We kept all of the lights off and quietly tracked this guy around the cabin's perimeter. He circled it twice before trying both doors and all the windows. Even though we knew they were locked, we still held our breath with each attempt. If he realized we saw him, there would be no incentive for him to remain stealthy. Every second felt like an eternity, but by the time he crawled through all the bushes to check the windows, he'd eaten up almost 15 minutes. After the last one, he circled back to the front door. and we could hear the wood bend and crack as he tried to force his way inside. All the while, 911 was still on the line, urging us to hide, insisting the police would arrive any moment. We ran to the back bedroom, barricaded the door, and then crammed ourselves into a tiny closet. We had to stifle our screams when the front door caved in, and again, a few minutes later, when the man found our room. He tried to keep the noise down at first, but upon realizing the door was blocked, he started ramming it. With each attempt, our makeshift barricade gave way a little bit more, until a loud bang confirmed that the dresser hadn't been heavy enough to do the job. We held onto the closet handle for dear life as slow footsteps paced around the room and stopped right next to the paper-thin door, serving as our last line of defense. The man's breathing was loud and congested, and he carried a strong odor of liquor. He let out a low, sinister chuckle as he jiggled the handle. But before he could try in earnest, his creepy laughter turned to angry curses at the sudden sound of approaching sirens. We couldn't understand much of what he said, but we heard his footsteps as he ran away. We didn't move until an officer gave us the all clear after they caught the guy in the woods. At first, the police thought that he was just a homeless man bouncing around between empty houses, and for years, that's what we thought too. But a few years later, we learned that the same man confessed to murdering 2 young women. It turned out he'd been a businessman who'd started using his vacation time for extended hunting trips. Does the Hat Man have a nemesis who's bigger than him? I read recently, either Reddit or Facebook, someone was talking about having to touch base with higher frequency beings to get them to deal with the Hat Man. I'm not sure how all of that works because I believe in God, and I believe that you should be able to get rid of him. Nonetheless, I've always felt a lingering dark cloud. I saw the Hat Man when I was 6, and since then, my life has been an interesting one, full of bad luck, heartbreak, and a lot of paranormal encounters. Recently, I've had weird things happening. Phantom voices in my room, phantom banging on the door. I felt like he was close and watching me, but I didn't see him. It's definitely not a haunting, as my house, it's not haunted. Last night, I had a very vivid dream that I was in a very light, beautiful place with the Hat Man and a woman. I'm not sure if she was an angel or what she was, but she reminded me of the goddess of mercy. A woman draped in white and very stately, and it looked like a courtroom in the sense that even though everything was cloudy and light, she was seated higher, and to the left of her, the Hat Man was sitting crouched, as if in a dock awaiting sentence. She spoke and said I didn't need to worry about him anymore, that she would be dealing with him for what he's done to me. Today is one of the first days in many, many years that I've felt lighter. I don't feel like I'm weighted down by anything dark or ominous. I don't know if it was just a dream, but I got the feeling his recent efforts to mess with me were very much against the order of heaven, and he was being made accountable. I've never dreamt about him before. So, I don't know if my dream was because of what I read, but I feel lighter, and it's hard to explain, but I've lost the feeling that darkness is inevitable in my life. I didn't even realize till today how strong that feeling had been. I'm not really sure how to start this. I'm not even sure why I'm sharing it, but I'm a 37-year-old female and I attract psychopaths. Truly, I am 3 for 3. I only had one boyfriend in high school, and he set my house on fire after I dumped him. Thankfully, he wasn't very smart, and we were able to put it out before too much damage was done. But he made it clear through various forums that he wanted me and my entire family dead. So, psycho. I was 17 when that happened, and I didn't date again until I was 20. We took it slow at first, but things were really going well, so we moved in together after 6 months. By the 10th month, he started punching holes in the walls, slamming doors. A few weeks after I'd managed to excuse that behavior, he hit me. That's when I decided, no more. I packed my bags and said I was leaving the very next day. That's when he tried to kill me. Before I could blink, he had me by the throat, and the world was going dark. I'd never seen anyone with such pure rage before. The awful way his face looked. There's no doubt he meant to kill me. He was too strong to fight, but in my desperate flailing, I kicked over a table and broke 2 vases. For the first time, I was actually grateful for our cheap apartment's thin walls. The neighbors rushed over just as I was losing consciousness. My ex fled, but the police caught up with him later that night, and I moved out before he was able to make bail. I went to therapy for a year after that, and I didn't date again until I was 28. This guy was the prime example of everything that you see in the movies. He showered me with gifts and affection. He was gentle and understanding. And most of all, he made me feel safe. He never complained about how slow I needed to take things. He seemed perfect. I guess they always do, don't they? 2 years later, things were still great, so I went back to therapy, learned to process my trauma, and we were married before my 31st birthday. About 6 months later is when things started to change. It happened gradually, but by our first wedding anniversary, he became someone I described as quick-tempered and closed off. Then he began working late and on the weekends. One day, I checked his phone while he showered, and I learned that he was having an affair. He may have angered easily, but he'd never been violent. I truly didn't think that he was that kind of man, but he was actually the worst of them all. When I confronted him, he started hitting me, and he didn't stop until I was unconscious. I thought he was going to kill me. But instead, he erased the evidence and denied that anything happened. He was completely out of his mind. I learned my lesson. I pretended to believe him. I even apologized and asked for his forgiveness. I just wanted to survive until he went back to work, so I could pack a bag and get out. All I knew is I needed to get to my parents, and I could figure out the rest later. But he saw right through me. That night, he fixed a romantic dinner, poured some wine. I dared not to turn it down, but I never suspected it was drugged. I passed out before I even finished the meal. I woke up, chained to the basement wall the next morning. He'd put the guest bedroom mattress on the floor, given me a bucket for the bathroom before leaving for work. He managed to keep me there for almost 2 weeks before my parents realized I was missing. Those 12 days that I was stuck there were by far some of the worst of my life. He was a monster. When he wasn't there, I simply laid on the mattress in agony, waiting for him to return. I kept hoping that each visit would be the one that he killed me. Even when the police finally came, I almost didn't answer them. I just thought they were another dream. It's been a few years since then. I'm happy to report that the bastard is in prison, and I'm single. I think I'm going to stay that way too. Before joining a support group, I really thought that my experience was unique. Horrifying, but unique. It's sad to say that it's really not. So many women and men have been through what I've been through. It's amazing that anyone manages to trust anyone these days. Oh, thanks for listening. Sometimes it's nice to just get that sort of thing off your chest. I grew up in a small town. When I was little, every so often my dad would get home a bit later than usual. When I'd ask why, he'd say that it was because he gave the can lady a ride home. The can lady was a short, thin woman in her 50s who could always be seen picking up cans on the side of the road. Everyone knew her. She didn't have any other job. Collecting those cans is what she did all day, just about every day. She was such a town fixture that many of the businesses would specifically save their cans for her, too. And when it began to grow dark, she would simply hitch a ride from wherever she was. Within a few minutes, someone would stop to take her home. She lived in a small house with her husband, and she'd been collecting cans since her early 20s. In fact, those cans played a large part in putting her children through college. The only problem was that she sometimes kept going a little too late, and it would be full dark before she started hitching. She was also known for walking too close to the highway. She was so comfortable out there that she could grow careless. More than once I heard my dad say that he always made sure to give her a ride because he worried that she'd end up getting run over, or worse. But as a kid, you never think that stuff will really happen. But it does. It happened when I was 10, and the whole town mourned her. She'd been walking along the shoulder after dark when a sleepy trucker came along and hit her. The guy was so messed up about it that he had to be sedated. I don't think he faced any legal issues, but I was too young to take much notice if he did. There's a lovely memorial by the accident site, and it's still there to this day, and enough money was donated to pay off the final year of her youngest daughter's tuition. Within a week or two of her death, several people were claiming to see her around town at night. My mom believes in ghosts, but my dad is one of the biggest skeptics you'll ever meet. He made sure to drill into my head that people were only grieving, and soon enough, they wouldn't see her anymore. I grew up to be a pretty big skeptic myself, but there are two instances that have always troubled me. It wasn't too many weeks later that my dad came home pale and dazed. He'd been driving home from work when he caught a glimpse of her. She always wore the same faded blue baseball hat and carried a giant trash bag full of cans slung over her shoulder. She was a hard lady to mistake. Anyway, it surprised my dad so much that he slammed on his brakes in the middle of the road and reversed. But nobody was there. Even if he had mistaken someone else for her, there was nowhere for them to go. A few weeks after that, my mom, who worked at one of the hotels, met an elderly couple passing through town. They arrived late and shaken up, claiming that they almost hit a woman as she tried to cross the highway. They came incredibly close to crashing into a guardrail, but managed to stop on the shoulder. The husband was so worked up, he got out of the car to confront the woman, but she was gone. The description the couple gave matched the can lady perfectly. I always wondered if my dad fell victim to his own grieving theory, but I don't know how people from hundreds of miles away could imagine the exact same person. I'm almost 40 now myself, and overall, I don't really know what to believe. But I thought it was an interesting story to share. Well, friends, it appears we've reached the end of tonight's episode. Thanks for joining me, whether it's your first time or you're a regular. Your support means the world, so thanks so much for listening. We've got a brand new episode every Friday night, and keep those eyes open long enough to find those deep sleep videos, and of course, double features. Subscribe, tap the bell, and you'll never miss a thing. I want to thank those who shared their stories, and a big thanks again to all of you for listening. Huge shout out to all of my patrons whom I appreciate so very much. Tracy S, Tamara K, Monica L, ZoeWatt, Chelle B, Donald C, Marion T, Rat Girl, Alisha S, Erin G, Nikki H, Mr. Revenant, Naz K, Brendon G, Paul T, Nicholas C, Lissane, Arlene F, and Adrienne. If you want to support The Darkest Hour in other ways, consider joining my Patreon, patreon.com/thedarkesthour, or click the link in the description to learn more. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, amandadarkesthour@gmail.com, or on the Darkest Hour subreddit, The Darkest Hour YT. Stay spooky.